And we're live. Great. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Code and Supply podcast. Today we have special guest Saron Yitbarek, the founder of CodeNewbie and PM at Microsoft. And we're going to talk about CodeNewbie and beginning in coding in general. And we have a few people here to help us do that. I'm Justin Reese, regular host, and with me is my other regular host, Alex Shinoy. Alex?
Hey everyone. That's
Well,
that's my intro.
well, that's good. Great intro. I definitely didn't start you at the
Did
beginning. Fine, moving on.
Sorry, no, wait. Did like the thing just like stuttered too? Was that?
No, we're good.
Okay, all right.
All right. Emma, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Emma. Probably seen me at some code and supply things.
Tiffany?
Hi, I'm Tiffany. Yeah.
And finally, our guest, Saron Yitbarek.
Hi, everybody. I'm Saron, and I do CodeNewbie and a bunch of other stuff that I'm assuming we're going to talk about.
And we absolutely are. Saron, why don't we start with your whole story and how you got to where you are right now. It's kind of along the lines of the show's general topic of CodeNewbie, where you wanted to learn how to code from a different world, and you made it happen.
Yeah, that's a great kind of one-liner way of putting it. I might have to steal that from you. But yeah, it started, I guess it was 4 years ago when I graduated college. I moved to the New York City area to do journalism, and I'd worked for NPR, and I moved up here to work for Discover magazine. And during that time, I read the Steve Jobs book, which for me really changed my life. Because for the first time, you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. That may have been Emma. Okay, all right, I'm going to keep going. So, so the Steve Jobs book really changed my life for a bunch of reasons. The big one being that here was a story of this guy who built products and did a lot of techie stuff that I'd always assumed meant that you had to have a computer science degree and you were like a gamer, living in your mom's basement, kind of, coding and doing Dungeons and Dragons and kind of that very, very stereotypical idea of what a programmer looks like. And I didn't really fit that. And here's this guy who was not that, but who was instead a storyteller and a designer and an artist and a bunch of other things that I could relate to personally. And so I read that book and I said, maybe there's a place for me in this tech world. And so I started doing a bunch of research. I looked into a bunch of different tech startups in the New York City area, asked a bunch of people out for coffee, and one of those coffees turned into an internship, and then 2 weeks into the internship turned into a job. And I spent the next 2 years working at tech startups doing things that were not technical. So I've done marketing and sales and business development and a bunch of other things. And I felt like every time I was hitting this wall because what I really wanted to do was build products. I really wanted to build things for users. And I couldn't do it because I didn't know what I was talking about and I didn't know how things were built. And so I decided to quit my startup job and learn to code for a few months on my own. Doing Treehouse, Code School, a bunch of those online resources that are either free or just really cheap. And then after a few months of that, I got accepted into a programming boot camp, and now I'm here.
And I think myself, Alex, and Emma are pretty standard paths to computer science. I know Emma and I actually went to the same school, and we had the same pure technology programming education. Alex, you had a computer science degree as well, right?
Yeah. I have a computer science degree from Pitt.
But Tiffany, you started the whole thing late. How about your parallels to Saron, because you're doing self-taught too, and I know that CodeNewbie has been really important for you getting to where you are.
Yeah. I was originally an English major a long time ago, and I felt that it, I wanted to be a writer, and um, with that, I mean, I've written all my life, and I wrote fiction and poetry, and but that, going along that path is not necessarily something that you can make a living off of. And while I always enjoyed tech and always wanted to build things, I didn't think that was a viable solution for me until just recently. So I started to self-teach, and I'm currently at Pitt right now, going the computer science route. But I still wanna teach myself web languages, because I think a lot of what I'm learning at Pitt is not um, web based, and I I find that I'm not um, let me pause. um, I find that I enjoy uh, the computer science route. I'm not exactly certain if um, going to a boot camp would be right for me, because I don't have the money to do that. But there is a thing called Viking Code School, where um, you don't have to put any money down, and you can go to their boot camp online, and once you get out and get a job, then you put down 18% on the tuition. So I really would like to get out and work very, very soon. I've been in school a long time, and I don't know. I guess computer science. I mean, I know that having a degree is something that's important, but I'm not sure how important it is.
Yeah, so, Saron, did you consciously choose the self-taught route for relevance? Because, like Tiffany was saying, a lot of what you get taught in, universities these days is still not relevant to what's happening, at least in web technology. It gives you good foundations, but is missing quite a bit. Is there a reason you kind of went, a self-taught direction?
Yeah, so I don't really think I qualify as self-taught because I did go to a school, right? I went to a non-traditional, non-accredited school, but I did go to a formal structure with, where we had a dean and a syllabus and a curriculum and all that. I think it's very different from a lot of people in our CodeNewbie community who are, basically just doing online tutorials and blog posts and really, really hacking it. And I have so much respect for the people who turn that, into a career. I think that's so much harder than what I had to do. But I decided to do the boot camp route over the, I guess, college degree. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, some closer to that.
Yeah, and it's really just about, what is the fastest way I can get to my goal. Everything that I heard about getting a computer science degree as it applied to the startup scene specifically, and as it applied to web technologies and being able to build products really quickly, it didn't seem to be a really great solution to get there. And, one of the most popular concepts in tech startups is the idea of an MVP, right? Your minimum viable product. And so from an MVP standpoint, it made a lot of sense to spend a fraction of the money and a fraction of the time at a boot camp first, and then if I decided that didn't work out, then to maybe consider doing a master's or another undergrad. But the idea of going back to school for another 2 to 4 years to get a degree, that was just way too just too much in terms of time and money, and I'm a little too impatient for that.
Yeah, I'm impatient for that as well. I mean, I've been going to school a long time, and I guess a lot of the recruiters that come and hit me up on LinkedIn want someone with a bachelor's degree, and I don't know if that's standard, but I don't get any offers that um, don't require me to have a bachelor's degree or some level of experience. So, how did you work to um, get over that barrier?
Yeah, so I wonder how much of that is regional, right? Because I'm in New York City, where we have a lot of, our tech ecosystem is very large. We're very proud of it. We're actively cultivating it and growing it, and we're very much competing with Silicon Valley to be Silicon Alley, right? So there's a lot of investment from the city and from big companies and small companies to really make sure that there are a lot of opportunities for us. I don't know what that atmosphere, what that ecosystem is like in different places. So I think that might, that's probably a huge factor. But in terms of me specifically, what I did, I think that it's very important to be good at what you do, but I think it's more important to show people what you're doing. And I think that a lot of mistakes or mistakes is a little bit harsh. One thing that I wish Code Newbies did differently is I wish that they were as vocal about what they're learning and what they're doing. Because I think that when you are out there podcasting and blogging and tweeting and speaking and volunteering and organizing and doing all these things, you end up, as a byproduct of those activities, you end up building a network. You end up building your team. And that's how I look at it. Whenever I do a speaking engagement, whenever I'm tweeting, I'm thinking of it as, okay, you are now part of my team. And on my team, we have this goal of making code and the tech industry a better place to be. And so we're going to help each other. If that means that, I find out about a job that I think you're a great fit for, we're on the same team. I'm going to tell you about it. If you find out about a job or an opportunity that is going to be great for me, you're going to tell me about it. And so, I think one of the biggest mistakes, I'm going to call this one a mistake, the biggest mistake you can make is to learn and grow in private, right? In this isolated place where only you know what you know. That is the worst thing you can do, especially as a beginner when you're just starting off and you don't have a track record, you don't have companies backing you. A lot of people in our community don't have a computer science degree. And in that situation, if you're learning in private and you're not telling people, you're making it a lot harder for yourself to actually get those jobs. So one thing that I've been very purposeful about is being very, very vocal. When I first started learning to code, I learned how to turn the background yellow with CSS, and I tweeted about it. I told everybody about it. When I was reading the Zed Shaw book, I think it was Learn SQL the Hard Way, I didn't have any real opinions on the book, so I just quoted the book and just live tweeted my reading of the book. And Zed Shaw saw that, and he reached out and he said, "Hey, I see you're reading the book. How do you like it?" And we started talking. And then when he came to New York City, we ended up getting lunch, and now we're friends because I'm very, very vocal about everything that I do. So I think that is one of the things that if you start doing in your career, whether it's in tech or any other industry, I think you'll end up finding a lot more opportunities than you will if all you're doing is learning in private and just relying on job boards.
That's interesting that you say that, because I'm very vocal but not necessarily inclusive. And I do a podcast with a guy named Nick Lash that I met on LinkedIn. I guess that's sort of how we met. I was posting my blog posts, my podcasts, and other things on LinkedIn, and he sort of reached out to me. He wanted to get together and do some stuff. So I guess what you're saying has a bit of relevance. I am very vocal about what I'm doing, but I don't think I'm utilizing my network quite the way I should. So you went to Flatiron, and I'm thinking about going to Viking Code School just to check it out and see what I can get out of it. What was your experience there? I don't know. Like, I'm not planning on going to a boot camp where I have to physically attend, because that's not possible for me right now. But I was wondering what your experience was at Flatiron.
Yeah, sure. Before we talk about that, do you mind if we touch on the network point that you made a moment ago?
Yeah, sure.
So I think what you said is very, very important, because you said that I have a network, I'm growing a network, but I'm not necessarily leveraging it, right? And I think that's very different. I think that having something is very different from using it. And I think the using it is something that I personally am getting better at as well, because at this point, with all the speaking and all the tweeting that I do, I have a good amount of people on my team, but I'm not always purposeful about asking for the right things and kind of using that to reach my goals. And so one thing that I've been working on is being very direct about my asks. If I say I want to speak at this conference, I'll find someone in my network and say, hey, do you know someone who's on the programming committee? Do you know someone who's on the selection committee? Can you put me in touch with that person? And so what I've been trying to do is find the very specific asks and telling people, even if I don't have a formulated ask like that, telling people what my goals are, right? My goals for the next year are, I'm going to build my podcast. I'm going to build, 3 more podcasts. And if I just say that to enough people, if an opportunity arises where they can help me, they'll remember that and they'll come back to me a little bit later. So, I think that being very vocal is about building your network, knowing your network well enough to know what to ask, when to ask it, and, what to communicate to them is the leveraging part that I think we can all get better at.
Is that how you got to co-host Ruby Rogues?
So Ruby Rogues was very interesting. I wrote, as part of the bootcamp experience, we were obligated to write a blog post. I think it was every week. I don't think I managed it quite that. But the very first blog post that I wrote was a reflection piece on a talk that was given by James Edward Gray, one of the rogues. And I don't know exactly how he came across it, but somehow he came across that blog post and he kind of started looking into my blog and he saw the Flatiron cartoon that I drew. And I think at that point I'd already spoken at RailsConf, so he saw my RailsConf video and that kind of all led to, hey, you should come on the show as a guest. And I did the guest thing and they really liked me and then they said, okay, let's try you out for like a 3-month, I think we called it jokingly the Rogue in Residence program. And so I did that for 3 months, and at the end of the 3 months, it was, hey, we'd like to, to have you on as a regular panelist. So that was, it started with that one blog post, but I think it was accumulation of a lot of the activity that I'd put online that led to the interest in actually bringing me on.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I would like to do a lot more of that. I've sort of reached out to Dave Rail. I don't know if you know him. He does the Developer on Fire podcast. One of the Code Newbies, Alex Gortney, he was on Dave Rail's Developer on Fire podcast. When Alex was doing his own podcast, he had Dave Rail on. And so I asked Alex to introduce me to Dave Rail. And so I just reached out to Dave Rail, and hopefully I can get to know him. So I want to be on his show. I want him to come on my show, but I want to sort of develop a rapport with him. How important do you think, before you get on someone's show and before you have them on your show or your blog, whatever, how important do you think developing a rapport with that person is?
I think it's so not important at all. I think that you develop the rapport by having them on your show, right? One of my I think best examples of this was Corinne. I'm totally going to butcher her last name, so I'm not going to attempt it, but she is the executive director of Girl Develop It, and I'd heard of her before. I'm a huge fan of Girl Develop It, huge fan of Sarah Chibbs and Vanessa Hurst, who co-founded it a few years ago, and I wanted her on the show to talk about GDI and talk about the work that they were doing, and what happened was that in the hour that we talked, that's when I really got to know her, right? That was, instead of going out for coffee or dinner or lunch, that was our coffee, dinner, and lunch. And I got to ask very specific and very deep questions about her work, about her view on, women in tech, and about the role Girl Develop It plays in that, in improving and in making tech a more inclusive place. And it was in that hour that we publicly got to know each other. And, I learned a lot about her, but she also learned a lot about me and what was important to me from the types of questions that I asked. And that was the beginning of a very real friendship. And, after that, we started emailing back and forth, and she was the one actually who nominated me to be the keynote speaker at EllaConf a couple weeks ago. And so, I think that interview is the coffee date. That is the rapport building step one. So, I think that you should totally look at that as, this is my chance to really get to know the person and ask the questions that I want to ask.
Cool.
I want to kind of interrupt along those lines. A lot of the content that Code and Supply has produced came as the result of almost a cold call, reaching out to someone. we love having Saron as a guest today, but I knew her because we invited her to speak at a secret conference that we're going to unveil in January. But after that, we don't know each other well. We don't have a rapport. But I like to have her on, get a great show out of it, because interesting people make for interesting content. And also, that's how kind of all the shows go. And people are also willing to be on your show because it's good for Saron to be on the show to build, her name and a group of, a couple thousand people that know about Code and Supply that might not have known her name. So I mean, it's a two-way street, and there's a lot of great relationships you can build just based on creating something together. And that's kind of like open source in general. Let's all build something together, and that's how we can get to know each other through building these cool things.
Totally agree. Yep.
Emma, you have a...
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I had a degree, I got a degree, like Justin said, information science at Pitt, but I think that, and perhaps to a lesser extent, but it's all the same things about making connections with people is really important. I mean, to be completely honest with you, after I got out of school, I had no idea about getting a job. I, would apply to like places I'd heard of and get no calls or anything like that. And I only ended up getting a job because I had been involved with another program that, I just heard about from some other. I had some friends who worked in tech, and I just sort of started hanging out with them, or started hanging out with their friends for the most part. But like friend of a friend, whatever. And perhaps it's a little different, but it's yeah, I guess it's sharing experiences with other people or whatever is really important. And I mean, I found out about the position that I ended up getting out of college from another, from that project. And from there, I mean, I moved to another job through Code and Supply, and I wouldn't have known, either of those things if I hadn't gotten out there, even as someone with a degree. And even a lot of the stuff that I did at my first job, we didn't have any, for the most part, we didn't have anything about like Linux general usage or system administration, at least not in the track of school that I did. And a lot of that was also stuff that I picked up from other people or working on other projects, trying to just build something with other people. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say,
Yeah,
really,
I'd echo that even further and say that a degree is good for maybe the first job you get on a job board anonymously, and you have no clue what you're looking at, and you're just kind of applying to places, because then it lends credence on a resume. But after you've made that, or if you need to make that step to get your foot in the door somewhere, after you've made it, everything you get going forward is going to be based on connections and who you know. And if you go get jobs through who you know, you're going to end up in a lot better positions, because you'll have basically built-in reviews to all these places instead of just going on a job board saying, okay, this looks good. So I think that's about as good as a regular degree can do.
Yeah, I mean, I got the job at Four Moms basically by going to Pittsburgh Ruby events. That's how I met Dan and Mark, and that's basically how I got the job. And I think the first time I met Mark, the first event that I went to, I actually met you, Justin. It was like a build night, but it was called something else back then. I don't remember what you called it. Something hack? Open hack? Open hack. And I don't know, I definitely think that's my advice to people that ask me, that are coming out of school, and when they ask me, like how should I go about getting a job? My answer is always to uh, join groups like meetup groups and things like that, and join communities and just start meeting people and networking with people, because that to me is a way better way to further your career than to go to job boards or use LinkedIn or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Emma.
Okay. I was just gonna say, in at my first job, multiple people made the comment to me that that the only reason that I got that job was because of the sort of like extra stuff that I did. You know, I was working on a small little project at the time in Pittsburgh with some folks that I've since left. But you know, not only was that how I heard about the job opportunity, but also that's how a lot of people said, like, you know, there wasn't really anything particularly interesting about my resume other than the fact that I was like clearly working on something with other people, uh, aside from just I don't know what happened. Sorry.
Yeah.
Aside from just school and trying to get a job otherwise. Uh, so
Yeah, I think those side projects are really important. So the job that I have right now, I'm a program manager at Microsoft, and I'm managing a new technical training program that we're doing called Tech Jobs Academy, and it's a 4-month free program, free to the participants, 25 people, and it's targeting unemployed and underemployed New Yorkers who make less than 50K. So really trying to find these alternate pathways to enter the tech industry and to get good jobs, and to really launch different tech careers. And so the way that, and I've been at this position for four almost 5 months now, and the way that I got this position was I got an email from a friend of mine who works at 18F, and he emailed me and he said, hey, I got an email about this really great position at Microsoft. It's basically what you're already doing for CodeNewbie, but you can get paid to do it. And I thought, holy crap, that's awesome. And I said, yes, please, recommend me, whatever you can do. And so he put a good word in, and I interviewed and got the position. And to me, that was just such an interesting moment where, the friend of mine who'd heard about my work, who knew what I was doing for CodeNewbie and knew about the podcast and the community that we'd built in the past almost 2 years, he saw that and he made that connection, right? So we talk about, doing your work and showing what you're building in public. Like, that was such a great moment to point to and say, yes, someone that I didn't know was paying attention, was totally paying attention and thought of me for this really amazing opportunity. And it was that really got me the place I am now.
And that leads kind of to a question that I had. I didn't know until today, actually, about what program you were running at Microsoft and how similar it is to CodeNewbie. Do you want to talk a little bit more about, how it's being approached by Microsoft and how it's different from CodeNewbie?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know if we ever actually explained what CodeNewbie was, so let me do that real quick. So CodeNewbie started when I graduated from the programming boot camp, and I loved my boot camp experience. Tiffany, sorry, I never actually officially answered your question on that, but overall, it was a really good experience for me. I think that boot camp is one of those things where you have to be a certain type of person to really take advantage of it. Otherwise, it can be very overwhelming. It can be just a lot to take in. But for me, I work best when I'm under pressure and there's always a deadline, and I can just kind of focus on one thing for 12, 16 hours a day. So for me, it worked out really well. But one of the biggest things that I got from that program wasn't the curriculum and the education and the teaching. It was really the community. It was being able to sit next to, 44 other people and cry together when it didn't work and to high five when it finally made sense. And it was that community that was just so crucial to my learning and my development. It was something that was very hard to get when I was spending the couple months learning to code on my own. And so when I graduated, I thought, that community experience cost me, $11,000 and 6 months total without a paycheck, which is a pretty big price tag for a community. And I didn't really feel like there was any other way to find these people, to find these code newbies all over the world who were going on this journey. And so I decided to put on a Twitter chat. And so we used the hashtag CodeNewbie. I tweeted it from my personal account. And we did that for, a few months, and it really started catching on. And after a while, I thought, okay, this needs to have its own Twitter account, needs to have its own, domain name, and needs to just kind of be its own thing. And we did the Twitter chat for, I think, the first year. And at that point, I thought, okay, this is really, people are really into it. They really like it. Let's do more stuff. What are other things we can do for these people who were going on this journey? And so about over a year ago now, I guess at this point, we decided to do the podcast, which was our way of, finding very specific stories and getting to dig deep, right? It wasn't just the Twitter chat where it was a great launching off point of connecting people. It was a moment to just kind of pause and dig into a single story. And so we did that, and then we launched the online forum where we could actually capture a lot of the resources and information that we were sharing on Twitter. And then we did the CodeNewbie Slack, which took off way more than I thought it was going to. And that was the place where in real time people can connect and help each other code and debug and really just provide an emotional support system for our community. And so CodeNewbie more than anything is very much a community. Like we're not an education company. Where we are a group of people who really want to see each other succeed, and we do that using a bunch of different tools. And so what I do at Tech Jobs Academy at Microsoft is similar in spirit, but the Tech Jobs Academy program is very much an educational, program. So it's 4 months of technical training. We focus on cloud and server administration, and most of the program is technical, but there's also a very big focus on career development. So those skills that Tiffany and I were talking about a little bit earlier, where it's not just about having the skills, it's about showing the skills. Like that definitely is going to happen in this program too. So we're going to do, even things as simple as how to send an effective email. I get a lot of email, and most of it is really bad. So I really want to show the world how to write good emails, and cover letters and resumes, and how to talk about your skills. One thing that's so true about the CodeNewbie community and just about getting that first job is, as Alex and Emma both said, you don't really have a lot going for you at that point. You don't have a lot of work experience. If you're graduating from the same program, your whole class has the exact same experience that you do because you graduated together. So how do you stand out? How do you differentiate yourself enough to get the attention of a recruiter, of an HR person? And so we work on those skills. So it's very exciting. It's a very different world. A lot of my time is spent working very closely with our community college system because it's in partnership with our college system and with the New York City government. And so a lot of it is spent on very long phone calls and meetings and legal documents and lots of Excel sheets, lots and lots of Excel sheets. But to me, the most important part is, when I get an email from we're currently in the application process, so I'll get an email from one of our applicants going, I'm really studying really hard for the technical entrance exam, and and I just passed, and thank you so much for encouraging me. Like those moments are really what would just make the whole thing. And so we are starting the program January 4, so I'll keep you all updated on how that goes. But I'm really excited. It's an opportunity to serve a very specific group of people and get them very specific technical training skills, and and fighting for them and really getting to be their advocates and helping them get jobs.
So it almost seems like Code Newbies could be a support community for programs just like what you're doing at Microsoft. Have you seen kind of sub-communities of people in Code Newbies showing up from like Flatiron and from Code Academy and things like subcultures around certain programs?
Yeah, sort of. So I know that we have a good amount of free code camp people. So we have a good number of campers in our community, but I know that Free Code Camp has their own community as well. We have Railsbridge is another community that's very active on CodeNewbie. We actually created a thread just for Railsbridge questions. It's one of our most popular threads, and so we kind of get a lot from them. And there was a short time when Div Bootcamp was a sponsor, and so we get a lot of Div Bootcamp people. So once in a while, like we'll see people kind of migrate over and join our group, which has been a lot of fun. It's great when, because we're not competing against the education companies, so we get to really be this, do good, feel good community organization that's really just about the people and providing a support system for them.
Yeah.
Alex? Oh, sorry. Sorry, someone else can take it. I'll put a note to pause.
Oh, okay. Um, do you have any plans to monetize CodeNewbie in any way?
Yeah, so we do right now, right? We have sponsorships on the podcast. So we've thought of in the past year, I've thought about different ways to make it into an education type company. But to me, that to me just doesn't make any sense. I've tried a couple little ways of doing it. Tried a couple prototypes, and at the end of the day, like what we are is a community, and you can't really charge people. Like you can't charge the community to be part of the community. It doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah.
So we do have what my goal is to do the podcast really well and to do a couple more media oriented shows where we can be sustainable from sponsorships. But right now I don't see a plan for us ever charging our members to be part of our community. That feels icky.
What about a CodeNewbie meetup?
Oh, we have a couple of those already. So we have
Oh,
one.
really?
You didn't know about it, Tiffany?
No,
I can't believe this.
No,
I'm
no, I did
offended.
not.
It's with you. But yeah, we have a couple. We have one in Philly. That was our newest one. We have one in Atlanta. We have one in Austin. We are planning on having a couple more. I think we're planning Nashville, Indianapolis, Houston, and maybe Newark for the new year. So yeah, we've done some meetups, and the great thing is, especially for Atlanta, Kim Creighton is the team leader there, and she's absolutely amazing. And when we were talking, she said, everybody here charges. Everyone charges for a meetup, and us being the one of the few totally free, come over, bring your laptop. We're inclusive, we're welcoming, we're really really nice. Meetups is very different for those environments. So I'm really excited to take the CodeNewbie brand and all the feelings and all the feel-good stuff that we do and to bring it to, physical environments. So yeah, we've been doing them for the last 4 months now, and we're going to slowly roll out to different cities.
How do you kind of maintain that growth in a way that's in line with the principles that you've set up for CodeNewbie? Because I'm sure that creating a welcoming and quality event is really important for CodeNewbie to succeed. So how do you manage that on the scale of growing to new cities and managing one in Nashville whenever you're in New York City?
Yeah, that's a great question. To me, that's been the scariest part, was exactly what you said. We start every Twitter chat with our 3 rules, which is, to be nice, be supportive, and be helpful. And we mean it. We will talk to you sternly if you are not nice and helpful and supportive. And so, that's been my biggest fear, is as we grow, how do you maintain that? With the meetups, it's been awesome. I mean, we have the team leaders that we have are absolutely amazing. They're, the 3 of them, they're very, very strong people. They've been part of the CodeNewbie community for a long time. They really get it. I don't have to explain the culture to them. They totally understand it. And one of the things that I've done for all of them is I've flown down to kick off the very first meetup. And so, in that way, we get to meet in person, which is awesome. I love getting to meet people. It's great when I take their Twitter avatar and they become real humans. That's always fun. And so, yeah, you get to meet them in person. You get to watch how they run the show. You get to give, feedback and advice. And, it's really just a lot of trust with the team leaders who are running the show. We have monthly meetings where we'll say, were there any issues, any problems that came up? How can I support you? And so we're very close, and we have really good communication channels. So the meetups, to me, honestly, as long as you have a really great person who knows the culture, who understands the rules, and is not afraid to enforce them, that's not a concern. To me, the bigger concern are the online communities, where I think it's a lot easier to get away with not being nice, right? And so Slack, to me, is both one of the best things and one of the most terrifying things I've done, because Slack is not meant to be a forum. It's not. It is meant to be an internal team tool for communication, which is different, right? It's not. There are no moderators on Slack. There are no report bullying or report spam. Like, there's no reporting features built into Slack. And so one of the things that makes me personally very, very uncomfortable is the idea that someone will say something and will, or do something or post something that'll kind of ruin it for everyone, and I won't know about it. Because if I know about it, I can say something, but I'm not on Slack 24/7. And the more CodeNewbie grows, the more international it's become, and so there are people there literally 24 hours of the day. And so that's something that I'm still figuring out. Luckily, a lot of the people on there know me, and the very few times, because maybe there's been 1.5 times anything has happened, at least to my knowledge, they've told me, and I've had 5 people say, hey, this thing is going on, you should probably check it out, and I've shut it down. It's been fine. But that, to me, is the bigger risk. When you go online, it's so easy to slip something in that's offensive and just not okay, or to say something as a joke and it's not funny for everyone. So that's the thing that we're still figuring out.
So aside from the media focused podcasts and growing to new cities, how do you see CodeNewbie growing over the next year to 5 years?
Oh man, so there are so many things I want to do, and the hardest part is focusing on one of them. So there are a bunch of things. So one is probably the riskiest and the hardest. I want to know what it would be like to have a physical space for CodeNewbie. So right now, CodeNewbie is a part-time thing for me. It's, my nights and weekends go completely to that project. But, I've heard, do you all know about the Tech Hire Initiative? No? Okay. Great, I get to tell you all about it. So the Tech Hire Initiative is a White House initiative that was announced, I think, 10 months ago, not even a year ago. And it is a national effort to retrain people and to get them into technical jobs. Tech jobs are high paying, they're secure, they're growing, there's such a huge demand for it. And so, excuse me. And so it's a really good opportunity to retrain folks that are at dead-end jobs, and to get them into this industry. And so I was at the Tech Hire Summit, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, where they brought together all these policymakers, educators, community leaders, different people in the industry, to get them in a room and kind of discuss what's working, what's not working. And one of the ideas that I'd heard there, which was very interesting, was the idea of a rec center, but a tech center. So it's like a community center where there's traditionally basketballs and pool tables and maybe some classes, but to put in a computer lab and to actually have learn to code courses and support groups and that kind of thing. And I thought, oh, that sounds really, really neat. And so I want to think more about this idea of having a physical CodeNewbie space where it's almost like a co-working space where you can kind of come in and bring your laptop, but it has programs and does workshops and tutorials, and it's a place for people to come and create stuff together. So that's one idea that I have. That's more of a long-term thing. The other thing is I really want to do more of the podcasting stuff. So there's a couple podcast ideas that I have that I'm currently working on, but I'd love to kind of see how far you can take this idea of crafting stories around technology and bringing them to the public. Right now, CodeNewbie is very much focused on people who have kind of already started on that journey, right? We're not taking non-believers and making them into believers. You're already sipping the code juice by the time you engage with us. And so I want to toy with this idea of taking these narratives and these learn to code stories and see what you can do, on a stage. What do you do if you wanted to do a live show, right? What do you do if you want to do a video series? And what happens when you gear it not just to people who are already coding, but to people who might be interested in it if only they knew. So those are the two big things I'm thinking about, is doing some type of a more live theater version more towards the public, the general public, and this idea of having a physical coding space where people can come and learn and collaborate.
That sounds really interesting.
Good. That means a lot coming
Yeah.
from you because you've been part of the team for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I discovered your podcast. I don't even know how. But I've listened to all of them, and they're really, really great. I wonder if you'd be willing to. I know that the people in the CodeNewbie chat and forums are not, name brands, but perhaps you could interview some of them that seem to have interesting stories. I know you interviewed Brian Douglas, who is really, really great. He's really doing a lot of good things. And he was part of the CodeNewbie community, and still is, but not as heavily as he was. But I was wondering if you'd be interested in doing a little expose or interviewing someone from the chat directly that seems to speak to you as something that's or someone that's interesting and has a cool story.
You mean from the CodeNewbie chat?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have someone in mind?
I don't have anyone in mind right now because I don't. I mean, I visit, and that's why I say I like to utilize communities more. I utilize it to get answers, but I haven't been there to just have community per se. So I don't really know a whole lot of people that have come to CodeNewbies just recently. So I'll get back to you on that. I don't have anybody right now, but
yeah. I mean, exactly what you said is the balance that we're trying to strike, right? Because I think that it's important to introduce people, if they don't already know them, to those brand names, right? Those the John Resicks of the world, and it's important for people to kind of get to know who these really big names are in the community. But I think it's just as important to focus on the actual code newbies, right? Which is why we've had people like Amy Simmons from Australia, who recently made her transition from journalism to code. We had Latoya Allen, who I think she did an apprenticeship, which she did a great job talking about. And we've had some other people. We had Kate Donahue talking about how she got into MakerBot. So we've had, we've been trying to balance having these big name brands and people you should know with people who maybe didn't make a huge contribution to programming like writing jQuery, but they're people you can connect with. And to me, one of the most thrilling and surprising things is when the code newbie story beats the bigger story. So when we did Courtney Irvin, I don't know what in the world happened that week, but we got a much bigger jump in downloads on that episode than the episodes surrounding it. And that was the one where she talked about being self-taught, and it was called Self-Taught Programmer, and it was about her talking about how she never did a boot camp, didn't have a CS degree. I can't remember what she studied in undergrad, but she basically spent a year learning to code mostly on her own. And that to me was just such a great win to see that one beat the top name that we had right after that. So yeah, I totally agree. I think that having that balance of different people and different voices is absolutely important.
So we're getting low on time for our podcast. So I wanted to kind of maybe get one more question. I know Tiffany has some good ones lined up already, and I want her to choose one of the dire ones that you have Saron on the line and you want to ask.
Make it good, Tiff.
And then we close the show out with that.
Well, I remember coming across your blog, Bloggy
Mm-hmm.
and you're a really, really good artist. And I was wondering how you see art intersecting with technology when you're doing what you're doing.
Oh man, you saved like the hard one for last. Okay, so let me I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna return that with a question. Do you see podcasting as art?
Yeah, I do actually, and it's it's difficult to pull off well, and that makes it an art form to me. Um, I think that um, you do such a good job with it. I mean, your questions are really, really in depth, and they're really meaningful. And you have such a good voice and such a good um, way of asking questions that a lot of people don't have, and that's what makes it an art form. When you can pull that kind of thing off with interviewing John Resig and to the non-name brands, um, that's definitely art to me.
Aw, thanks, Tiffany. I'm so glad I asked you that question. Um, okay, so back to your question of how does art kind of fit into coding. So it's interesting. When I ask other people this question, they always say, "Oh, it obviously fits. It's all the same thing. There's always the creative process in coding," and I totally don't agree with that. I'm sorry, past podcast guests, but yeah, I don't see that at all. I think they're very, very different. When I'm thinking about a guest and the interviewing process, the way I approach it is so different. It's much more at this point, because I was a journalist and I've done NPR and a lot of interviewing type stuff before. A lot of my interviewing is very instinctual at this point. A lot of it is just kind of pulling from different things that I remember, and I'm just going off my gut most of the time. I do very little preparation for the podcast. I look a couple of things up, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and I have a general flow, but a lot of times we don't really end up following the flow. And so when I compare that process with how I code, and I think this is because as a coder, I'm still very new. I've only been doing it for 2 years. As a coder, I have to work a lot harder, and I have to have a process. When I learned about behavior-driven development, that changed my world because I had a way of coding now. Like I had a formula, I had steps that I could follow. And to me, coding takes so much more effort and thought and research, and it's very steps driven, where to me, and in my experience of interviewing and even drawing, I think to me is the same process, where I'm going mostly off of my feelings, right? Oh my goodness, if you at some point maybe I'll do a video of what it's like when I draw cartoons. I look at something and I'll go, it doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. Like it doesn't I spent so in the RailsConf talk that I did, first time I did animation. The first animation that I did was of me raising my eyebrows and like the creepy dude on the busway. And I spent so much time on those eyebrows, an insane amount of time on those freaking eyebrows, because every time I go, it's not creepy enough, went too far. And I just, I was just really going off of the feeling that I had when I'm looking at it. But when I'm coding, I don't think I'm at the point where I can rely on my gut. I'm still thinking about, okay, I just, that method is more than, 4 lines long? It's too long. Sandy said I have to make it shorter. I'm really relying on these rules and these things that I'm learning. So for me, the experience of creating in an artistic way is a lot easier and more feelings driven. And coding is very much a process, step-driven thing where I'm relying on specific tools I can point to. So they're very different experiences for me.
All right, cool.
I think that eventually those methods do become the eyebrows, and they do become. Oh, it could be so much. It could be so much creepier, or it could be so much less creepy. I've spent that much time refactoring, and it could be so much more servicey or something like that.
Mm-hmm. That's what I
But-
aspire to, and I like that. If I get to that point, I'm gonna name my next talk when it becomes like the creepy eyebrows. When coding is like the creepy eyebrows.
I like it.
I like that.
All right. Well, that was a great way to end it. Great question, Tiffany. To end the show
Thanks.
on. So let's go through everyone, say our goodbyes, say our thank yous, and wrap this one up. Let's go in the same order we did at the intro. Alex.
All right, yeah. I'm Alex Shenoy. You can find me on Twitter at Alex Shenoy. Really, Alex Shenoy anywhere, and alexshenoy.com. And thanks again, Saron and Tiffany and Emma, for coming on.
Yep.
Emma.
Thanks for having us. I'm Emma. At mdantrim on Twitter. EMDANTRIM.
All right. Tiffany.
I'm Tiffany, and thanks for having me on. I'm at TiffanyW_412 on Twitter.
And Saron, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Saron. You can find me on Twitter at Saron Yitbarek, Yitbarek, just my full name. And I would love for you all to tune into my podcast, the CodeNewbie podcast. We release every week. We've done 63 episodes now, I believe, if I'm counting that correctly. And we'd love to have you all listen to our show as well. And thank you all so much for letting me talk about myself for an hour. That's always fun. Thank you all. Have a good time.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.